Commander Jake Morrison stood in the center of the Great Hall. The walls around him were made of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. He had been in this room many times before, but today felt different. Today would be the last time he spoke. For humanity in this place, 7 aliens sat in tall chairs around the curved table. Each one looked nothing like the others. Zelthon looked like a walking diamond, its body made of clear crystal that caught the light. The Nephori was a cloud of green gas that floated above its chair. The Cathora had 6 arms and looked like a giant bug with black eyes. The Dulari wore a water suit that let it breathe, its fish-like face watching through the glass. The Vorton was pure energy that sparked and moved like lightning. The Sylvani looked like a tree that could walk with leaves for hair. The Cognitum was a metal robot with glowing red eyes. Jake had served humanity for 15 years. He had seen his people work hard, fight wars, and die for these aliens. But humans were still called a probationary species. They could not vote. They could not make decisions. They were treated like children who needed to be watched. The Zelthan named Zethfer spoke first. Its voice sounded like wind through a cave. We have looked at the human request again. We have talked about it for many days. So the council has made its choice. Jake felt his heart beat faster. Behind him, Captain Lisa Harper sat with the other. Human diplomats. She had worked for 20 years to get humans full membership in the council. Her whole life had been spent trying to prove that humans belonged here. The council votes to keep humans as a probationary species for 50 more years, Zethfer said. Humans are too aggressive. Okay, fight too much. They do not think before they act. They are not ready to help make decisions for the galaxy. Jake's hands became fists. 50 more years? His children would be old before humans got another chance. His grandchildren might never see it. The Nephori spoke next. His voice was like wind through leaves. Humans are useful for work that others cannot do. They are good at fixing things. They are good at fighting. But they are not good at thinking about big problems. The Cathora clicked its mandibles. What? Humans change their minds too much. They do not follow rules. They ask too many questions. This is not good for the galaxy. Jake wanted to scream. For 300 years, humans had done the dangerous jobs. They had gone into the deep mines where crystals grew in the dark. They had fixed the machines that other aliens could not understand. They had fought in wars that were not even their wars. They had died protecting alien worlds. Admiral Ben Crawford was watching from his ship far away. He had given 40 years of his life to the Council's military. He had lost his brother in the war against the Hector pirates. He had lost his wife in the battle for Sigma Prime. He had lost friends in a dozen different fights. All for aliens. Who thought humans were too stupid to have a real voice? The Dulari bubbled in its water suit. Perhaps humans would be happy doing the work they do now. They are good at maintenance. They are good at security. These are important jobs. That was the final insult. Jake had heard enough. He stepped forward and spoke in a clear, strong voice. Humans have heard your decision. We thank you for your time. But we will not serve the council anymore. The aliens looked at each other. The Cognitom's red eyes flashed. What do you mean? I mean we are leaving. All of us. Every human ship, every human worker, every human soldier, we are done with the council. Zethfer made a sound like breaking glass. You cannot survive without us. You need our technology. You need our protection. You need our trade. Jake smiled for the first time in months. We will see about that. The Vorton sparked with energy. This is foolish. You have nowhere to go. Galaxy is dangerous. You're pirates and monsters. In the dark between stars, then we will face them ourselves, Jake said. Lisa Harper stood up behind him. She had spent her whole life trying to make peace with these aliens. But she was tired of begging. She was tired of being told that humans were not good enough. The humans gave you 300 years, she said. We built your cities. We flew your ships. We died in your wars. We asked for nothing but respect. You gave us nothing but insults. The Sylvani rustled its sleeves. You are making a mistake. You will come back. You will beg us to take you back. Jake shook his head. No, we will not. As far away on ships scattered across the galaxy humans were. Already getting ready, Dr. Amy Chen had been working on new technology for years. She had built faster engines and better weapons. She had done it in secret, knowing this day might come. Colonel Rick Stone had been training human soldiers in new ways to fight. He had taught them to work together without alien commanders. He had prepared them for the day when they would stand alone. Captain Helen Park had been mapping the empty spaces. Beyond Council territory, she had found worlds where humans could live. She had marked safe routes through dangerous space. The humans had been getting ready for this day for a long time. Jake turned to leave the Great Hall. The aliens called after him, but he did not look back. Outside, human ships were already moving. The great exodus had begun. Within hours, humans were leaving Council space. They took their families, their belongings, and their dreams. They left behind the aliens who had never valued them. The council members sat in their crystal hall and watched the humans go. They thought the humans would come back in a few months begging for help. They thought humans could not survive without the council. They were wrong. The humans flew their ships into the unknown darkness between the stars. They were scared, but they were also excited. For the first time in 300 years, they were free to make their own choices. Behind them, the great council station grew smaller and smaller until it was just another star in the night. Ahead of them lay the infinite galaxy, full of dangers and wonders that no human had ever seen. They were finally free. 6 months had passed since the humans left. The aliens thought they would be fine without them. They were wrong. On the mining world of Kepler-7, Overseer Crystal stared at the broken machines. The crystal mines had been quiet for weeks. The deep tunnels where the most valuable crystals grew were too dangerous for most aliens to enter. Only humans had been brave enough and smart enough to work there. Crystal had sent 3 teams of... The tunnels were always changing. Rocks fell without warning. Poisonous gas leaked from cracks in the walls. The humans had always known how to spot the dangers. They could smell the bad air. They could hear when rocks were about to fall. They could think fast when things went wrong. The Zelthans were made of crystal. They thought in straight lines. Could not adapt when things changed. In the deep mines, everything changed all the time. Wait. Send another team, Crystal ordered. Sir, we have lost 12 workers already, his assistant said. Maybe we should wait. We need those crystals, Crystal said. The communication systems across the galaxy depend on them. But deep down, he knew the truth. Without humans, the mines would stay closed. The crystals would stay in the ground. And the galaxy's communication would slowly fail. Far away, in the gas clouds around the planet Typhon, the Nephori were having their own problems. The great harvesting platforms that collected fuel from the gas giant's atmosphere were breaking down. The platforms were huge machines that floated in the crushing winds of the planet's upper atmosphere. The Nephori were beings of gas themselves. They could not touch solid things the way humans could. They had always needed human engineers to fix the machines, to replace broken parts. To solve problems that required hands and tools, Platform 7 had been drifting for 2 months. Its collectors were broken. Its stabilizers were failing. Soon, it would fall into the planet's core and be destroyed. The platform was worth more money than some planets. Supervisor Velanoth watched the platform through his instruments. He had tried to send Nephori workers to fix it, but they could not handle the solid tools. They could not turn the metal screws or weld the broken pipes. Can we hire humans from somewhere? Velanoth asked his assistant. Sir, all the humans left council space. There are no humans left. Velanoth felt something he had never felt before. Fear. Without fuel from the gas giants, the council's ships would stop flying. Trade would end. The galaxy would go dark. In the cold depths of space, the Cognitum faced a different problem. Unit 7742 commanded a patrol fleet near the outer rim. His ships were fast, and his weapons were powerful. His computer brain could calculate the best way to fight any enemy. But the pirates they faced did not follow the rules. They did not fight in logical ways. They attacked from strange angles. They used tricks that made no sense. They ran away when they should fight, and fought when they should run. Unit-7742, had lost 3 ships in the past month. His logical battle plans were useless against enemies who did not think logically. Was working. Before the humans left, Unit 7742 had worked with human officers. The humans had taught him about intuition and instinct. They had shown him how to think like the enemy, even when the enemy was not thinking clearly. Now Unit 7742 was alone with his logic. His logic was perfect, but it was not enough. The pirates kept winning because they were unpredictable. The cognitome could not be unpredictable. It was not in their programming. On the hive worlds of the Cathera, Queen Zixara watched her people starve. The Cathera were organized like insects. Each had a job to do. The workers farmed. The soldiers fought. The drones served, but the Cathera could only farm on safe worlds. They tried to grow food on dangerous planets. They died. The hostile environments were too much for their rigid minds to handle. The humans had been the ones to tame the wild worlds. They had figured out how to grow food in bad soil. They had learned to fight the dangerous animals. They had built farms where no one else could live. Now the Cathora were running out of food. Their population was too big for their safe worlds to feed. Without new farms on new worlds, millions of Cathora would die. Queen Zixara had tried to send her workers to the hostile worlds. They had all failed. The workers could not adapt to the changing conditions. They could not think of new solutions when old ones failed. Deep under the oceans of Aquatica Prime, the Dulari city of Depth's End was dying. The great pressure systems that kept the city safe were failing. Water warm were breaking down. The Dulari lived in the deepest parts of their oceans. The pressure would crush most beings instantly. The cold would freeze them solid. Only the great machines kept the cities alive. Chief Engineer Bublin swam through the dying city. Emergency lights flashed red in the dark water. The pressure was dropping. The temperature was falling. His people were already getting sick. The humans had built these machines long ago. They had maintained them for centuries. The Dulari had never learned how the machines really worked. They had just trusted the humans to keep them running. Now, the humans were gone. The machines were failing. The Dulari did not know how to fix them. In the forest cities of Sylvan Prime, Elder Rootdep called for an emergency council. They decided slowly. A massive storm was coming. The wind would destroy their cities. The floods would kill their young. In the old days, the humans would have acted quickly. They would have built barriers. They would have moved people to safety. It would have saved lives. But the Sylvani Council needed time to think. They needed time to discuss. They needed time to reach consensus. The storm would not wait for them. High above the planet Nexus Gamma, the Vortons faced their own crisis. They were beings of pure energy. They could control lightning and fire. They could travel at the speed of light. But they could not fix the power grids that connected their worlds. The grids were made of metal and crystal. They required careful maintenance and precise adjustments. They needed beings who could work with solid matter. The humans had built the grids. Humans had maintained them. Now the grids were failing, and the Vortans were losing power. Without power, the Vortans would fade away. They would become weak and scattered. A great civilization would die. Across the galaxy, the same story was happening everywhere. The aliens had thought the humans were just workers. They had thought the humans were just soldiers. They had been wrong. The humans had been the ones who solved problems. They had been the ones who adapted to change. They had been the ones who held the galaxy together. Now the humans were gone. The galaxy was falling apart, and the Great Council. They did not want to admit the truth. They could not ignore it anymore. Without humans, the galaxy was dying. And somewhere in the darkness beyond Council space, the humans were building something new. 1 year had passed since the humans left. Council's problems had become disasters. Admiral Negtar of the Cognitome stared at the battle reports. His metal fingers clicked against the table as he counted the losses. 17 star systems had fallen to the Ravager horde in the past 6 months. 17 systems that should have been easy to defend. The Ravagers were wild nomads who lived on their ships. They had no homeworlds to protect. They had no rules to follow. They attacked without warning and fought without logic. Before the humans left, the Ravagers had been contained. Human military leaders had known how to fight chaos with chaos, but the cognitum, military minds could only think in straight lines. They made perfect battle plans based on logic and mathematics. The Ravagers ignored logic. They did things that made no sense. They attacked when they should retreat. They retreated when they should attack. They turned defeats into victories through pure madness. Nogtar's latest defeat had been the worst. 300 cognitum ships had surrounded a small Ravager fleet. The battle should have been over in minutes. Instead, the Ravagers had somehow turned the cognitum ships against each other. By the end of the fight, the cognitum fleet was destroyed, and the Ravagers had stolen their ships. "How do we fight an enemy that does not follow rules?" Nagdar asked. His staff, no one had an answer. The cognitom were machines. They could not think like madmen far away. In the diplomatic stations near the galaxy's edge, first contact with the Phantom Collective had gone very wrong. The Phantoms were beings from another dimension. They did not think like normal creatures. They had strange goals and impossible technologies. 2 years ago, human diplomats had successfully made contact with the Phantoms. Ambassador Danny Cooper had spent months learning their weird ways of communication. He had figured out their strange customs, had made a trade agreement that gave the Council access to dimensional travel technology. Now, Council had tried to renew the agreement. Without human help, the meeting had been a disaster. Alien diplomats had insulted the Phantoms without knowing it. The Phantoms had declared the Council to be enemies. The dimensional gates had been closed forever. The loss of dimensional technology was devastating. It had allowed instant travel across the galaxy. It had made trade fast and cheap. It had connected distant worlds in ways that normal space travel could not. Now the trade routes were broken. Ships that used to cross the galaxy in days now took months. Colonies that depended on supplies from other worlds were running out of food and medicine. The galactic economy was collapsing. On the water world of Deep Blue, the Dulari faced extinction. The great city of Depth's End had finally collapsed. The pressure systems had failed completely. The crushing weight of the deep ocean had destroyed buildings and killed thousands. The surviving Dulari had fled to shallow water cities, but these were also failing. The thermal systems were breaking down. Water was getting too cold for the Dulari to survive. Their fish-like bodies needed warm water to live. Chief Engineer Bubblin had tried everything he could think of. He had studied the human-built machines. For months, he had taken them apart and put them back together. Nothing worked. The machines were too complex for Dulari minds to understand. "We need the humans," Bubblin told the council leaders. "Without them, we will all die." But the council leaders were too proud to admit their mistake. On the forest world of Sylvan Prime, the great storm had finally come. Elder Rudep had called for evacuation, but the Sylvani Council was still debating where to go. They had been discussing the problem for 3 months while the storm grew stronger. The humans would have acted on the first day. They would have moved everyone to safety without waiting for perfect consensus. But the Sylvani needed everyone to agree before they could act. The storm hit while they were still talking. The winds destroyed half the forest cities. The floods swept away thousands of young Sylvani. The survivors huddled in the ruins and wished they had listened to the humans who had warned them about acting quickly in emergencies. Meanwhile, in the space beyond Council territory, humanity was building something amazing. Captain Steve Parker stood on the observation deck of New Horizon and watched the sun set over Liberty Prime. The human colony had been growing for a year now. The first crops were coming in. The first children had been born. The planet had seemed impossible to live on when they first arrived. The weather was wild and unpredictable. Dangerous animals hunted in packs. The ground shook with earthquakes almost every day, but humans were good at adapting. They had learned to predict the weather by watching the strange clouds. They had tamed some of the animals and scared away others. They had built their cities to bend with the earthquakes instead of breaking. The colony was not just surviving, it was thriving. On the archaeology world of Redemption, Dr. Tony Blake made a discovery that changed everything. Deep in the ancient ruins, his team had found a message from the race that built them. The message was written in mathematical symbols. That took months to decode. The ancient race had faced the same problems as the modern galaxy. They had been divided into different species that could not work together. Each species had become too specialized. They had forgotten how to adapt and change. But some of them had learned to think differently. They had become flexible and creative. They had survived when all the others died. The message was a warning about the dangers of rigid thinking and a guide for building a better civilization. The ruins contained technology that was far beyond anything the Council had ever built. Weapons that could destroy stars, ships that could travel between galaxies, computers that could think like living beings. But the most important discovery was not a machine, it was an idea. The ancient race had learned that the species that could adapt and change would always defeat the species that stayed the same. Dr. Karen White was working on her own breakthrough. In the research stations of New Terra, she had been studying quantum consciousness for years. The Council scientists had said her theories were impossible, but Karen had kept working. Now, she had proved them wrong. Her team had built a machine that could connect minds across any distance instantly. Not just communication, but actual thought sharing. Two people could think together even if they were on opposite sides of the galaxy. The technology would change everything. Human colonies could stay connected no matter how far apart they were. Problems could be solved by combining the best minds from everywhere. Humanity would become stronger the more it spread out. Back in Council space, the disasters were getting worse every day. The Ravager horde had grown to over 1,000 ships. The Phantom Collective had begun attacking Council worlds from other dimensions. Pirates and criminals were taking over systems that the Council could no longer protect. On Nexus Prime, the Great Council Station itself was dying. The environmental systems were failing. The artificial gravity was unstable. The power grid was overloading. The station had been built by human engineers centuries ago. Only human maintenance crews had known how to keep it running. Now those crews were gone, and the greatest symbol of Council power was falling apart. Evacuation alarms were ringing as Council leaders fled to their ships. The station that had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years was becoming a tomb, as Nexus Prime died behind them. The alien leaders finally understood the truth. They had not been ruling the galaxy. The humans had been holding it together for them, and now the humans were gone, building their own future among the stars. 2 years had passed since the humans left. The galaxy was dying. The Ravager horde now controlled half of what used to be Council space. Their fleet had grown from hundreds of ships to thousands. Every time they conquered a world, they forced the survivors to join them. Every battle they won made them stronger. Commander Skrektor led the largest Ravager fleet ever assembled. His ships were a mix of stolen Council vessels and crude war machines built from scrap metal. They did not look impressive, but they were deadly. The Ravagers had learned to fight by absorbing their enemies. When they captured Cognitom ships, they learned Cognitom tactics. When they took Zelthon weapons, they learned Zelthon technology. They were like a disease that grew stronger by eating what it killed. The Council military could not stop them. Every logical battle plan failed. Every careful strategy was turned against them. The Ravagers thrived on chaos. Chaos was all they left behind. In the deepest bunker on Nexus Beta, Counselor Thyron of the Dulari led a secret meeting. Around the table sat representatives from all the surviving Council species. They had finally admitted the truth to themselves, but they were too proud to say it out loud. "We need to understand what went wrong," Thyron said. "How did we go from ruling the galaxy to fighting for survival in just 2 years?" Dr. Velinara, a Sylvani scientist, had been studying this question for months. Her research was classified top secret. The results were too embarrassing for the Council to make public. "I have analyzed every major crisis in Council history," Velinara said. "Every war we won, every disaster we survived, every problem we solved. In every case, humans were involved in the solution." She activated a holographic display that showed hundreds of incidents across 3 centuries. Battle after battle. Crisis after crisis. Always, the successful outcomes had human involvement. The humans were not just workers or soldiers, Velinara continued. They were the element that made our rigid thinking flexible. They were the bridge between our different ways of thought. Without them, we cannot adapt to new problems. The council members sat in uncomfortable silence. They had always believed they were superior to humans. They had thought human unpredictability was a weakness. Now they realized it had been their greatest strength. "What do you call this human quality?" asked Admiral Nogtar. "I call it the human factor," Velinara said. It is the ability to find solutions that do not follow logical steps. To adapt when conditions change unexpectedly. Others would give up. The data was overwhelming. Every council species was good at certain things. The Zelthans were perfect at crystal technology. The Cognatum were perfect at calculations. The Vortons were perfect at energy manipulation. None of them could adapt when their perfect systems failed. Humans were not perfect at anything, but they were good enough at everything. More importantly, they could learn and change and grow. They could take ideas from different species and combine them in new ways. Without humans, Velinara concluded, we are just 7 separate species that cannot really work together. We can trade and we can make agreements, but we cannot truly cooperate. As if to prove her point, a new disaster struck that same week. The Phantom Collective returned to Council space, but not for diplomacy. They came for war. The Phantoms materialized their ships inside Council territory without warning. Their interdimensional technology let them appear anywhere they wanted. They attacked 3 worlds at the same time, then vanished before the Council. Fleet could respond. Traditional defense was useless against an enemy that could ignore the normal rules of space and time. The Council tried to predict where the Phantoms would attack next. But logic was useless against beings from another dimension. The Phantom ships struck again and again. They destroyed military bases, wiped out colonies, and captured entire star systems. The Council forces could not fight back because they could never find the enemy. In desperation, the Vortons tried to use their energy powers to track the Phantom ships. They sent massive energy pulses across space, hoping to detect the dimensional rifts. The plan failed catastrophically. The energy pulses interfered with the Phantom technology, but not in the way the Vortons expected. Instead of revealing the enemy, the energy waves caused a massive feedback explosion. The Vorton homeworld of Nexus Gamma was destroyed in seconds. Billions of energy beings died instantly. The few survivors scattered across the galaxy like sparks from a dying fire. Loss of Nexus Gamma broke the last of the Council's confidence. If the mighty Vortons could be wiped out so easily, what chance did anyone else have? Far away in human space, life was very different. Admiral Kate Thompson commanded the human defense fleet from her flagship Independence. Her ships were new designs, based on lessons learned from centuries of Council service, but built without the limitations of alien thinking. When a small Ravager scout force tried to raid the human colony of New Hope, Thompson's fleet was ready for them. The humans had studied Ravager tactics carefully. They knew the enemy's strengths and weaknesses. The battle was over in hours. The human ships used unpredictable tactics that confused the Ravagers. When the Ravagers tried to adapt, the humans changed their approach. The chaotic enemy found themselves outmaneuvered by an even more flexible foe. The surviving Ravagers fled back to Council space with stories of human ships that fought like ghosts and human tactics that made no sense. For the first time, Ravager Horde had met an enemy that was more adaptable than they were. On redemption, Dr. Alex Rodriguez made another breakthrough in the ancient ruins. The precursor race had left detailed records of their civilizations' rise and fall. The story was familiar and terrifying. The precursors had started as many different species living on many different worlds. They had formed a great alliance that spanned the galaxy. For thousands of years they had prospered and grown, but gradually each species had become too specialized. They had stopped learning from each other. They had become rigid and set in their ways. When new challenges arose, they could not adapt fast enough. One by one, the precursor species had died out. Only the most flexible had survived, and they had eventually evolved into something new. Something that could think in many different ways at once. The message was clear. Rigid thinking led to extinction. Only the species that could adapt and change would survive in the long run. As if summoned by the Council's desperation, alien ships began appearing at the edge of human space. They came secretly, one at a time, carrying messages from their governments. The first to arrive was Tekvar, a young Zelthan engineer who had worked with humans before the Exodus. She brought word that several Council species were considering surrender to either the Ravagers or the Phantoms. "My people are dying," she told President Susan Carter, leader of the human colonial government. "Our worlds are falling. Our technology is failing. We need help." More ships arrived each week. Dulari, refugees fleeing their flooded cities. Cognitome survivors from destroyed fleets. Sylvani elders, whose forest had burned. They all brought the same message. The galaxy was dying, and only humanity could save it. But the terms of any rescue would be very different from the old Council system. Humanity had learned to survive on its own. They had built something new. And better, the aliens who had once called humans unfit for leadership were now begging for human protection and guidance. The universe had indeed gone mad when the humans left, and only the humans could make it sane. 3 years after the Exodus, the galaxy stood at the edge of darkness. Half the known worlds had fallen to the Ravager Horde or the Phantom Collective. The remaining Council territories existed in chaos and fear. President Susan Carter stood in the command center of New Terra, reading surrender requests from 4 of the 7 Council species. The irony was bitter. The same aliens who had called humans unfit for membership were now begging for human protection. Admiral Frank Davis entered the room carrying tactical reports. His analysis was grim but clear. "The threats are beyond what any single species can handle," he said. "The Ravagers have over 3,000 ships now. The Phantoms can attack from other dimensions. Pirates control the trade routes. The galaxy is falling apart." Susan nodded. She had expected this day would come. "But we cannot save the galaxy alone, can we?" "No," Frank admitted. "Even humans have limits. We need the alien technologies and resources. But we need them working together properly this time." Dr. Patricia Murphy, head of human xenopsychology research, had been studying the problem for the Council failed because it was built on hierarchy and competition, Patricia explained. Each species tried to prove they were better than the others. They suppressed each other's strengths instead of combining them. She showed holographic displays of successful human-alien cooperation from before the Exodus. When humans worked with aliens as equals, amazing things happened. Zelthan crystal technology enhanced by human creativity. Cognitome logic guided by human intuition. Vorton energy controlled by human engineering. "The key is integration, not domination," Patricia continued. "Each species has incredible abilities, but those abilities only reach their potential when they work together with human adaptability." The test of this theory came sooner than expected. Long-range sensors detected a massive enemy fleet moving toward the last major Council stronghold. Organized resistance in the galaxy? Admiral Scott Williams prepared for humanity's greatest battle. Zelthan crystal ships with their perfect communication systems. Cognitome vessels with their precise weapons. Dulari submarines adapted for space combat. Sylvani bioships that could repair themselves. Each alien crew worked alongside human officers who coordinated their efforts. This was not the rigid Council hierarchy where each species operated separately. This was true integration, where different abilities combined to something greater. The Battle of Sigma Prime began when the combined enemy fleet emerged from hyperspace. 3,000 Ravager ships materialized alongside hundreds of Phantom vessels that phased in and out of normal space. Gary Phillips commanded the Strike Force Aurora Wing. His ships included humans, Zelthans, and Cognium working as a single unit. When the Phantoms? The Zelthan crystals tracked their dimensional movements. While human intuition predicted their attack patterns, the battle raged for hours. Traditional tactics failed as the enemy's chaotic nature overwhelmed logical defenses. But Scott Williams had prepared for this. His strategy was to turn the enemy's greatest strength against them. The Ravagers and Phantoms were both chaotic forces that thrived on unpredictability, but they had never fought together before. Williams used human creativity, combined with alien technology, to create situations where the two enemy forces would attack each other. Cognitive precision, targeting guided by human tactical thinking created false sensor readings. The Ravagers began firing on Phantom ships, thinking they were Alliance vessels. The Phantoms retaliated by opening dimensional rifts under Ravager formations. In the confusion, integrated Alliance ships struck with coordinated precision. Zelthan communication allowed instant coordination across the entire fleet. Cognitum calculations provided perfect firing solutions. Human adaptability exploited every opening. The tide turned when the enemy forces began fighting each other more than they fought the Alliance. The chaotic nature that made them individually dangerous became their weakness when they were together. By the end of the battle, the greatest threat to galactic civilization had destroyed itself. The surviving Ravager and Phantom ships fled in different directions, their alliance broken forever. The victory at Sigma Prime saved the galaxy. But more importantly, it proved a new way of thinking. Not council hierarchy, where species competed for dominance, but true cooperation where differences became strengths. 5 years after the original Exodus, the Galactic Federation was born. President Susan Carter signed the founding charter alongside. But this was not the old council with its rigid rules and species separation. The Federation operated on a revolutionary principle. Leadership was based on ability to adapt and coordinate, not on species hierarchy. Humans naturally took many coordination roles because of their unique flexibility. But every species contributed essential capabilities. Former Counselor Zethber, the Zelthon who had once called humans fit only for maintenance work, now served as Deputy Director of Communication Systems under Human Director Emma Brooks. But it was not revenge. It was evolution. The rigid thinking that had nearly destroyed the galaxy was replaced by adaptive cooperation that made everyone stronger. Captain Steve Parker stood on the observation deck of New Nexus, the Federation's mobile headquarters. Through the transparent walls, he could see ships from dozens of species working together. Human vessels flew alongside Zelthan crystal ships, cognitum metal hulls, and organic Sylvani bioforms. The fleet was preparing for humanity's greatest adventure yet. The ancient precursor ruins had revealed the locations of other galaxies where life might exist. Federation would explore beyond the known stars, carrying the lesson humanity had taught them all. In a chaotic universe, the species that could adapt and bring others together would not just survive. They would lead the way to wonders that no single species could imagine alone. The humans had left the council and the universe had gone mad. But from that madness, something better had been born. A galaxy where differences were celebrated, where cooperation replaced competition, and where the spirit of human adaptability guided all species toward a brighter future among the infinite stars. The universe was sane again, and it was more beautiful than ever before.